Double picking is a really awesome technique that you can use to spice up your lead and rhythm playing, but unfortunately it can be pretty hard to know where to get started with it. But lucky for you guys, I know the perfect place that you should go to learn the technique. It's the middle section of one of the baddest tunes to come out of the 80s. I think you know this one. In addition to sounding supremely badass, that middle section of Still of the Night by Whitesnake is like the perfect training ground for your double picking skills. And in this video, I'm going to show you guys some basic technique tips to get you going, as well as show you why this is the place you need to start off for your double picking adventures. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. Jake E. Lee, our good buddy John Sykes here, and the guys from bands like Mastodon and Cynic use double picking all the time in their riffs and leads. This is essentially where we're playing a run of straight 16th notes where every single note gets picked twice with a downstroke followed by an upstroke before moving to the next note. It sounds awesome and more players are using this in their writing, but it can be really hard to know where to get started because a lot of this stuff is just fast and brutally tough to play. But the way that this section of Still of the Night slowly progresses in difficulty makes it the perfect place to start if you're new to this technique and want to master it fast. That's what we're going to talk about today. As always, this video is brought to you guys by everybody who supports my channel over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today for access to all kinds of cool stuff like downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus videos, and so much more. This week, everybody who supports my channel is going to get access to downloadable tabs to go along with this lesson, plus the practice track that I made to help you get it down fast. I'm also going to be putting up a bonus video showing you all some more advanced double picking riffs that you should learn to help you get more better at this technique. So don't delay. Sign up today. Gear-wise, today I'll be playing my lovely Jackson Virtuoso guitar here into my Marshall 1987X Plexi, which is going into my UA aux. Yeah, let's get picking and doubly. Oh, now wasn't that just a double-picked delight? That's exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to this technique, and I want to show you guys some of the essentials that you gotta know about the mechanics of this before we get straight on to learning how to play that section of Still of the Night. If you want to get straight on to that, there's your timestamp. You can go straight to it if you just want to learn how to play the dang thing. But the first thing that we got to talk about is the trick to making this work, and that trick is downwards pick slanting. Now think about it this way. Every note that we're playing in a double pick phrase receives a downstroke and then an upstroke. And after that is typically where we're going to change strings or change notes to something else. Now what that means for us as players is that the upstroke is serving two functions. The first one, the primary function, is that it's sounding the note out, duh. The secondary function, though, is that upstroke is also acting as our mode of transportation to get to the next note or string. It's kind of like it's sounding the note and acting as an elevator to get you where you need to go to next. In order for that to happen, that upstroke has to get some air time, which is where the downward pick slanting thing comes into play right here. I've talked about this a bunch. Troy Grady has talked about this a ton over on his channel. Check out his Cracking the Code series. It's actually life-changing. But the basics here are that we're not necessarily picking straight up and down. Whenever I'm picking up and down like this, you can see how the pick is kind of stuck in the strings. Now if I was trying to play two notes and then change strings, maybe to the G in this case, this puts me in a tough spot because I'm currently trapped in between the D and A strings. So I'd have to kind of hop, get to that string, then I'm stuck again, I'd have to hop to get to the next string. You're kind of creating a series of booby traps for yourself by staying inside of the strings like that. Downward pick slanting sets the entire thing on its axis. That way our downstrokes are kind of going into the strings like this, and our upstrokes are catching airtime, coming up and away from the strings. So look at it this way. Here's my picking totally flat. You can see I'm trapped after the downstroke, in between the strings. You can see I'm trapped after the upstrokes in between the A and D strings. But if I take that entire flat picking mechanic and I start to turn it over here on its side so that it's more diagonally, or it starts to look like this. Now notice here, it's not just the angle of the pick that has changed. It is the entire path of motion of the picking that is changing also. I don't want to see you guys just taking your pick and putting it at a diagonal like this, then continuing to try to go up and down. That gets stuck in the strings, it sucks, it doesn't work. You got to make the entire angle of the picking match the pick itself so that you're going at a diagonal like this. You'll encounter very little resistance with the pick, and it'll give you that valuable air time that you need so that you're outside of the strings whenever it's time to change. Typically, whenever I've shown double-picked riffs to my students and they can't get it, it's because their picking is trapped both ways. But considering that with double picking, you're always going to be changing notes or strings after an upstroke, this is really essential to get this down. Lean that picking over a little bit so you get that diagonal angle and that smooth feel, and your upstrokes popping out and above the strings like this right here. It's okay if your downstroke even kind of crashes into the next string as like a stopping block like this. You can see with every downstroke I'm kind of parking it against the G, then using that as a springboard to launch that upstroke afterwards. That's actually totally fine to do, and I do that a lot, even at really high speeds. Now, if that feels totally foreign to you, and that just does not work with the way that you usually play, there's an alternative, because here's the deal. A lot of players out there, especially players that got their start playing like heavy metal rhythm, it's like a lot of downstrokes, James Hetfield style, you know, their picking doesn't really do this downstroke in the strings thing. They kind of do this downstroke out away from the strings thing. So their picking is kind of the opposite of what I just described. The downstroke is getting airtime, and the upstroke is kind of going into the strings. This is a lot of heavy metal players, actually. This is what Troy would refer to as an upwards pick slant. And if you naturally play that way, there's hope for you. Take all these patterns, and instead of starting them with a downstroke, start them with an upstroke instead. That's it. So like for example, the crazy train pattern I played earlier, right? If I was a downward pick slanting player, which I am, I would play it starting with a downstroke, because that's going to get my upstroke airtime, right? But if I was the opposite of that, an upward slant player, I could just start this all with an upstroke. And see how that's allowing me to change strings after the downstrokes instead. So if you don't really get the downward pick slanting thing naturally, don't worry about it. Just invert all the picking and you're going to do just fine. So now let's get to the licks and talk about what makes this the perfect training ground for your double picking skills. Number one, the tempo is not that bad. It's only 100 BPM, and we're playing those 16, so it's da-ka-ticka-da-ka-ticka-da, about like that. It's not heinously fast. Pretty much everybody can alternate pick that fast. It's way easier than learning some of the more advanced like Mastodon or Riffs by Death, bands like that. That stuff is really fast. That's a terrible way to start learning this. So this is a good approachable tempo. Now the thing about this that makes it so great is that it is step by step getting more and more difficult the entire way through. So let's take a look at the first phrase here. I'm going to play this starting off down on my D string fret number 2, using that set of notes. You don't have to get out the violin bow like you saw in the video. That's not necessary for this to work. You could also play this up the neck or whatever, but I'm going to put it down here at the lower position of the neck, down here in the cash register as opposed to the upper register. So here's what we're playing first. 3, 4. 3, 4. It's a one string phrase, just walking up E, F sharp, G, and back to F sharp. Now what I want you guys to do is take advantage of those little rest breaks that are in the first section of the bridge right here. After every one of these phrases you get a 2-note rest, and you can use that to kind of let your nervous system process the information that you just fed it. It's really important to take breaths whenever you're learning a new technique. I'm a huge proponent of speed bursts and taking rest breaks inside of your playing, not just playing straight 16s to try to get faster. Do a little sprint. Don't do a marathon is the way that I look at it. So every time you hit one of these rest breaks, I want you to do two things. Make sure you're staying relaxed. Make sure that when you rest, you don't breathe out a big sigh of air or loosen up your shoulders or whatever. If you do any of that, it means they were tense when you were playing. So be sure to make sure you're staying relaxed while you're doing this. The other great thing about that rest break is it lets you check your upstroke. See, check this out. Whenever you hit that rest break, you will have just played that last upstroke on the F sharp note, right? It's perfect to take this as an opportunity to look down here at your pick and see if it's getting adequate air time. And again, airtime just means it's out and above the strings, not buried in the strings. This is what you don't want to see. You stop and you realize your pick is in between the A and D strings. It should look like this. I'm out, I'm well away from the strings. That means I could easily change strings to a lower string or a higher string, either one. So use that rest break to check your upstroke. So you got that first one string lick 2 times in a row. 3, 4, 3, 4. After this, you get to the second section, which ramps up the difficulty in a really subtle way, because we're going to be moving to a couple of different strings here. Our first string change here, going from the C note to the F sharp note. This is a great place to test the efficacy of your upstroke air time. That's a lot of $5 words right there. If you're getting good air time above that second note right there, you should be able just to crash right down on the F sharp note. After you play that lick one time, 3, 4, we get to the next section, which again turns the difficulty up gradually. We're going to go to a longer burst of 16s this time. So I just basically went from having the same C bass note as I had a second ago to changing it to a D bass note. So we're just playing more notes without a break this time around. That lets you restart the next sequence, which is exactly where we started before. Starts off with the one string stuff, rest breaks, 3, 4, changing strings, and then a longer burst of notes. 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the next section too, which gets more difficult, and then I'm going to show you all some more picking tips and ways to practice this that's going to make it a whole lot easier to learn. So stick with me here. Let's just go ahead and learn the parts first. Now this next section continues to get more difficult. There's no rest, it's just straight 16s the entire time, okay? And we're going to have some string changing and string skipping in here as well. Here's how the first part of it sounds. Play that one more time here. So we're kind of decorating that first phrase a little bit more here. We're walking up and down that E to G thing. Then going down here to a B note on the G string before we finish out the phrase. So it sounds like this. Then we go to the second phrase, which is like this. Okay, so it's just like the first phrase. Then go into the D note. And then we get to this section, which is the most difficult for sure. Big old string skipping happening. This is really going to test your upstroke air time. So we got our kind of Lydian C thing here. And then you're going to jump all the way here to the D note on the B string. And then back to your little G and F sharp. So it's... This is why that upstroke has to get air time. I'm outside of the strings, I can just go straight down and make connection with the B like that, you see? And then off that last upstroke, that is my elevator to get back to that D string. That's why the string skipping with double picking isn't really that much of an issue. If you're doing these upstrokes right, it's taking you right to where you need to be. And then the last phrase is going to be like this. Okay. And then it loops the entire thing. So again, the first lick is going to be this one. Next one walks down. Then we have our C with the string skipping. And then the one that walks from C to D. And that is the entire thing at a brisk 100 BPM. It's a perfect slow climb up the difficulty ladder, and it's exactly where you want to start if you want to become a double picking deity like John Sykes himself. And I know you do. But what, pray tell, is the right way to practice and master this? Well, I'm here to tell you. It's simplifying it down to something way more approachable. What I want you guys to do, especially with the phrases that are like the non-stop 16s, is to dumb this down to being simple downstroke 8s. Here's what I mean. Instead of doing double picked 16s, I want you to really chill out and just do downstroke 8s. I'm sure all of you guys can do that pretty easily at the target tempo of 100. That was over 100, but I'm sure at the slower speeds you can definitely handle that. Let's just take that first phrase right there and focus on that right now. Now here's the thing about that. What we just played, even though it seems easier, is in a lot of ways actually harder than doing the double picked 16s. And this kind of relates back to stuff that I talked about on last week's video. Be sure to check that one out. It's how downstrokes are really the key to unlocking your alternate picking speed. It kind of relates to some of the stuff I talked about in that video. Because think about it this way. Let's say I was playing a single string like this, and I was just doing downstrokes. And I was playing that line that we just played. Da, 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 da. So you'll notice with the downstrokes, I got to go down and through the string and then up and over the string to reload before I unleash my next downstroke. So it's like downstroke, return, downstroke, return, downstroke, return this entire way through. Now the reason why I'm saying that's actually more difficult than doing the big boy double pick thing is because it is. Check this out. Whenever you do the reload or return, as I'm saying, what if we just got lazier and left the pick in the string? All that I'm really thinking about doing here, I'm not thinking about doing an upstroke at all. I'm thinking about reloading to get ready for the next heavy downstroke. So I'm not thinking downstroke, reload. I'm thinking downstroke, reload. It's the same mental process. I'm just being lazier with it. I'm leaving the pick in. Why take it out when you can just leave it in? Know what I'm saying? I think this is that soaking thing the kids are talking about these days, right? Google that and let me know what comes up. Don't let me know what comes up. Don't talk about anything that's coming up. Anyway, so what I want you guys to think about is just doing less. If you can do these downstroke 8s, you can absolutely do the alternate 16s as long as your picking angle is good and not getting snagged on the strings. Again, the angle is really, really important there. The angle of the dangle is proportional to the heat of the beat, if I'm not mistaken, and this is no different. So whenever you're doing this stuff, here's what I want you to think about. If you can do downstroke 8s, I'll just do those 4 notes right now for simplicity's sake. Your hand is bouncing like this, right? If you're doing the 16s, hand is moving at the same rate of speed. You're already fast enough. If you can make your downstrokes go dun 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 dun, your hand is already going fast enough to go ducka 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 duck. You've already got the speed. That's the crazy thing about this. People think I'm not fast enough or whatever. You're already fast enough. You're actually just doing too much. You're pulling it out every time. Just leave it in. Get lazy. Leave it parked inside of the strings and just hit that upstroke as your reload. And you're going to be double picking in no time. So if I was practicing this and I wanted to get it up to speed, I would practice the entire thing first as eighth notes with downstrokes only. 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Making sure I can do that really comfortably. And then I would just try to think about doing less with the pick, leaving it in the path of the strings, letting that upstroke hit it as part of my reload, rather than thinking of it as its own note. It's just a consequence of the fact that I'm pulling the pick up to get above the string again to do another downstroke. 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. As I'm playing that, I'm still really only trying to feel and hear the downstrokes, the eighths. I'm trying to ignore the upstrokes entirely and just think about playing that phrase. 3, 4, 3, 4. It can even help to enunciate those downstrokes as you play it. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Really accent where the downs are. Don't think about the ups at all. That's my biggest piece of advice I can give you about double picking stuff. Concentrate on the downs only, then get lazier with your picking. That's all you got to do. So there you go, guys. That's all the info you need to start becoming a magnum, mega, double picker person. Or something that sounds cooler than that. This is the perfect place to get started if you want to see grades 2 and 3 and upwards. Be sure to check out the Patreon video that I'm releasing alongside this one that's going to be available to everybody, even just the $1 a month supporters. It's also where you're going to get the tabs and practice track for this too, so be sure to sign up over there today. If you want to learn how to play all of the other guitar stuff in Still of the Night, minus the guitar solo, which I've still not done, I know, I'm going to do it one day. Be sure to check out my comprehensive video on that, and if you're a huge John Sykes fan, I recommend checking out my John Sykes riff retrospective that I put up, I don't know, a year or two ago. Really cool look at his entire career of being an incredible, unbelievably underrated guitar player. Love that guy's playing, so be sure to check those out if you're a Sykes fan. Thanks for liking the video. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell on your way out. That way you get notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. And be sure to stick around next week when we're going to be talking about something else that's really cool that I've not decided yet. Let's click it. More picking.